I'd been thinking about shooting a documentary film on a small craft distillery for about 2 years, but I didn't really get serious about the idea until about 6 months ago. Once I decided it was something I wanted to do, I threw the idea out to a few of my friends. One old friend just happened to know the owner of a small craft distillery in Franklin, Kentucky. It's important to note that this is my first attempt at shooting a documentary film. A tremendous amount of preparation went into this, but no amount of prep can bring you through your first attempt unscathed. Mistakes were made. With those mistakes comes learning. My mic was having issues during my interview with Marc Dottore. Luckily, his mic was good. You're going to hear some crackles and pops. I've since ordered a Rode shotgun mic for my camera, so I will have 2 audio sources for any future shoots. It is what it is. A lot of work went into this, and I hope you enjoy this film.
So we source all our grains from one farm, Walnut Grove Farm out in Shockoe, Kentucky. It's a family farm, 6 generations have been producing grain. And in the last 4 or 5 years, they've really retargeted their business toward distilleries. And they sell to me, they sell to multiple distilleries all around the state and in Tennessee. Good guys to work with and really superior product. It took, when we started working with them, the quality of our grain went up quite a bit. We went to a kind of a common number 2 yellow corn that most people can get to a number 1 corn that had been fully cleaned, perfect moisture content. Everything about it was great. And so it's just been a really, really good relationship. This year, we're sort of pushing the boundaries to get to 200 barrels, 53-gallon barrels. So not a lot. We run a 200-gallon pot still, and everything's double distilled. So that last year we did 100. Last 3 years we did 100. And so I've had 50 barrels available this year to dump and put in bottles. Half of that I'll sell here in the gift shop. The rest of it will be sold in Middle Tennessee and Kentucky. But that's still there. It was the first one I started running on a production basis. Okay. Took me 6 months to fill this barrel, which is a 25-gallon barrel. This is barrel 1, and it took 6 months of work to fill it. Wow. And not working every day, obviously, but quite a bit. You'd only get 2.5, 3 gallons of tops off of that still for each pass. So it took us quite a while. And then we upgraded to the 250. Okay. Yeah, everything back here is based on 250 gallons. Okay. So we do 250-gallon cooks, what we cook twice a day. 250-gallon strips, we strip twice a day for 4 days a week, and then 2 days of finishing runs. So it's a 6-day process. It's 66 corn, okay. 22 wheat, 12% malted barley.
Oh, 12% is higher than
it is. Yeah. I did it for a couple of reasons. One, I mean, they make whole whiskeys out of barley, right? So it has a lot of complexity and it adds a lot. And I feel like, having a broader range, a little bit more of that sort of stuff, just brings out more diversity in the flavor. It may all be just my imagination, but that's what I feel. And we use about double the ratio of malt that most people do. We're definitely looking to expand. The only hindrances are time and money. So ultimately, I'd like to go from this 200-gallon platform to my next jump to be a 1,200-gallon platform. So that would put me at a much more significant number of barrels. I've already started sourcing some of that equipment. I've got a few pieces lined up, And but we'll have to go through a pretty major upgrade as far as heating and cooling and all that kind of stuff. But I've got at least one of the pots already ordered, and I'm waiting on it. We'll kind of start getting that going.
You gotta expand the warehouse here?
No, the building will stay the same. What's going to happen is we're going to get some things out of here.
Right.
The grains, we wouldn't be able to do that level of production just having grains at 50-pound sacks. So we're going to have outdoor bins and an auger system. That actually gets a whole lot of stuff out of the way. To our side over here, there's this big pile of bags. And then we've been moving a lot of stuff out. We've moved empty bottle stock, empty material like empty barrels, that kind of stuff out, those kind of things. And eventually I could see bottling going in another location. But I think the physical plant would always fit in here. If I don't see us ever going to a column still, so height really isn't going to be a problem for me. If I wanted to go column, it would fundamentally change the bourbon. And, you know, I wouldn't be opposed to going column if it was for a different product or something, but we've established Lincoln Pinch as a double pot distilled bourbon, so I'm going to stick with that. So Lincoln Pinch was the name of the farm or the area where the duels were fought.
Okay.
The reason we're not 100% sure is that the courthouse burned down in the mid-1800s, and all the records went with it. So we don't know the derivation of Lincoln Pinch, but we do know that that area was called Lincoln Pinch, or it was Lincoln Pinch Farm. We know that the Duncans owned it. Sanford Duncan and his wife, I think it was Dorothy, owned it. And we do know that factually that there were duels fought there. And we do know that Sam Houston fought a duel there, which is kind of cool.
So can you tell me a little about the farm?
Sure. Appreciate you guys being here. So we're at Walnut Grove Farms in Shockoe, Kentucky. My brother John and I are sixth-generation farmers. Our family's been farming here in this area since the mid-1800s at least. We're at least sixth-generation farmers. That's as far back as we can count anyway.
Mm-hmm.
What we've done in the last 10 years or so is we've tried to focus on premium end users and developing strong relationships with the end users of our grain. And so because of our geography and where we're located, the bourbon industry sort of stood out as a good customer segment for us to target.
Sure. And how big is your operation? I mean, how many acres do you have here?
Well, we manage about 8,000 acres altogether, which is a mid-sized family farm for this area.
And what about production of the grain? I mean, do you do full production or just farm it, or do you mill? Or?
Well, what we do is we produce corn, wheat, barley, rye, and soybeans. So soybeans are not used for bourbon, but the other grains that we produce are all a good fit for the bourbon industry. And so at Walnut Grove Farms, we kind of have two areas of focus. We produce crops, those crops I just mentioned, as well as grain handling, logistics, storage, and cleaning. Okay. So we don't mill the grain, but we do store it over the course of the year and do just-in-time delivery, and we clean all of our grain that's going into our premium customers such as Marc and Dueling Grounds.
So I know you provide to Marc, but what other bourbon distilleries do you provide to?
Well, we have several good relationships. We send corn into some different Brown-Forman distilleries, as well as some other craft distilleries similar to Marc. Some of those are in Tennessee, and some of those are in Kentucky.
All right.
So we've Castle and Key is another one in Kentucky that we have a good, long-standing relationship with, as well as some good friends in Tennessee that make Tennessee whiskey as well.
All right. How many types of grain do you have? Do you have different variations of rye, different?
So starting with corn, all the corn that we grow is non-GMO, first of all. So we've made that switch because that's the pull from the bourbon industry and the Tennessee whiskey industries, that they've primarily requested non-GMO corn. Mm-hmm. So we grow non-GMO yellow corn, we grow non-GMO white corn, And these were both, those two variations would be modern hybrid seed corns, but they're non-GMO. And then on specialty contract basis, we've grown heirloom corns like an heirloom white hickory king, for example, and we've done some other small projects like that on the corn side. And we do similar things with the other grains. Rye is something that is not grown a lot in Kentucky, but there are a handful of farmers working with the University of Kentucky, as well as the Kentucky Small Grain Growers Association and some other entities that are involved in the project. And we're trying to learn how to grow rye in Kentucky on a larger scale.
Right.
So that is another project that we're involved with, and we're growing some different rye varieties on our farm as well.
Okay. And I'm not even familiar with how many different, I mean, I know there's a lot of different variations of corn, a lot of different, varieties of rye and things like that. Do you know a ballpark? Like what is, how many options do you have? And what's more common for the bourbon industry?
Well, I think probably the first big choice that comes to a distillery as they're getting started is what kind of corn they want to use.
Right.
And so probably the first major decision is, are they going to be non-GMO corn or GMO, which is, there's a higher, GMO corn is more readily available. Mm-hmm. It's slightly cheaper than non-GMO. It's a little bit easier to produce than non-GMO. So there are several, so the high volume, big distilleries in a lot of cases would not be able to source enough non-GMO corn to go that route. But that's one of the advantages that a smaller distillery like Dueling Grounds has, is that they can do some more specialty type runs, and they can use more specialty type grains with their volumes. So the GMO, non-GMO question is maybe one of the first ones that would be decided. And then the heirloom grains are something that you're not going to find in high quantity either. Right. But, if you want to do some specialty runs with some heirloom grains, then you can kind of work that into your production schedule and do something special on occasion as well.
All right. Well, thank you for sitting with us on this and tolerating all of this setup here. And thanks for setting this up. This is great.
No, it's good.
But is there anything you want to add to showcase the farm? Or?
Well, I think the thing that we'd like to point out about Walnut Grove Farms is that kind of our tagline is growing agricultural value chains. And our concept of a value chain is you start with the supply chain, which is pretty cut and dry. It's a manufacturer providing raw material to a processor. And so you start with a supply chain. But the way we define a value chain is you take the supply chain and you add long-term working relationships to that. Mm-hmm. And so Marc and Dueling Grounds is a perfect example of what we're trying to accomplish here with our family farm, is growing these agricultural value chains and being a key part of their supply.
Yeah, I was talking with your brother just now about the farm and the grain and the cleaning process, not milling but cleaning. Do you want to expand on that?
Sure. So what we do our goal is to meet all the specs that our distillery customers want. So as Sam was talking about, it starts with what grains do they choose? Do they want a specific variety? Do they want a specific type of corn or wheat or rye, whatever? And then the next step is making it meet the actual specifications. After we have the grain they want, we have to make it as clean as they want it, as pretty as they want it, versus just coming straight out of the field. So, when we harvest it, we put it into big storage bins, and then we meter it out to the customers over the course of the next 12 months until the next harvest. And so we have to make sure that the quality going into storage is good. So we start out by making sure that it's at the right moisture so that it doesn't spoil in the storage bin. And then as we bring it out of storage and actually are ready to deliver it to the customers, we run it through a grain cleaner. So we purchased our first grain cleaner, I think in 2018 when we started cleaning ourselves, versus we were working with a seed cleaner prior to that to do as we were just getting started. But it's an air screen cleaner. So that means that it has several layers of screens on a shaker table that takes out cobs of the corn, and it takes out, small pieces of grain or just little pieces that fall all the way through the screens. And then it also has basically a vacuum air system that pulls off all of the lightweight material. So when a combine goes through the field, it's pulling in that whole corn plant, and it's stripping out most of the chaff and taking the kernels off of the cob, in the ear of corn. And so mostly we have just the kernels of corn is what we're storing in a bin. But then basically we're running it back through, it's kind of almost the same as the internal mechanisms of a combine to re-clean everything and take out all of the rest of that foreign material. And that's really what it comes down to. That's what we call it, is foreign material. So typically, in storage, it might be about 3% foreign material. And when we deliver it to a customer like Dueling Grounds, we get it down to like 0.5% foreign material. So, in talking to those guys, they've said, they have really seen a difference in the just the way the product flows through the system, alcohol yields they get, stuff like that. There's not gunk in the system. And it's, if you come see our cleaner, you can see, it has different spots where you can see what the vacuum system is pulling out and what the screens are taking out. And you can really see the difference in a dirty sample of corn that has all of that extra stuff in it, and the number one cleaned result of, just pretty corn kernels.
So we were talking earlier about just learning to grow, and we have an implement driving by over here. But we were talking about learning to grow rye here. So do you procure any grains?
Yeah, so we do. So we've been working with a company called Schooler Grain for, I think, since about 2014 is when we started working with them on rye. So they're one of the main rye suppliers to the distilling industry in North America, really, but specifically in Kentucky and Tennessee. And so they source rye. They're a nationwide or international company, but we work with their office out of Calgary, Canada, and where a lot of North American rye is produced, sort of in that part of the of Canada, and also in kind of the northern tier of the United States also. And so they source rye from farmers and elevators in that area. And then occasionally they'll also bring some rye over from Europe. Typically rye is produced in that more northern tier versus here in Kentucky. So it likes a little bit cooler climate typically. But since that's where most of the rye is coming from, we started working with them in 2014 as kind of their footprint. So they ship rye to us and we receive it. We've actually, over time, as we developed this relationship with them, we bought a small rail facility in Bowling Green. And so we receive rail cars from Canada and also across Canada and different parts of the U.S. too, where they ship rye to us. And we've actually installed another rotary screen cleaner there so that we can pre-clean rye. And we're in the process of getting a color sorter, which just takes that cleaning to another level. For it's specifically, we're using it specifically for rye versus corn, because there's a fungus that can get in rye that's toxic on the byproduct side. It doesn't affect the whiskey, but on the byproduct side, if you're going to feed it to animals, then you can't have this. It's called ergot in there. So we have this color sorter that we're installing in Bowling Green to make sure that we can have that. Just like we were talking about with the corn, where we want to hit that number one spec and have a really premium quality grain. Be able to do the same thing on rye and kind of raise the bar on grain quality.
I suppose this makes sense why Canadian rye. That's why they make a lot of rye in Canada.
Yeah.
I mean,
sure.
That's home grain.
Yep. Exactly.
But I'm going to be very interested to see maybe over the course of the coming months and years of what's able to be grown here in rye, and what's that going to do to the flavor production of bourbons and other whiskeys. It'll be very interesting.
It's been a lot of fun. Our project with University of Kentucky that Sam mentioned, and looking at different varieties and things, and a pre-sample of what the impact it might have on whiskeys is getting to make it into some breads and things like that. We've gotten to do some fun experiments and have some good food and good drinks along the way. So
All right.
It's been a lot of fun.
Well, I really appreciate you taking the time with us here, and good stuff. And
Thanks for coming out.
all right, no problem.
Appreciate it.
We're right on the state line between Kentucky and Tennessee, 35 minutes to Nashville. We get a lot of, the town is growing for sure. Bowling Green is a growing community as well. So we benefit a lot from that. But we are the first Kentucky distillery, closest Kentucky distillery to Nashville. So that's kind of cool. We get a lot of people who are just in town for a couple of days and they make a run up so they can check us out. So we actually store with Wilderness Trail Distillery in Danville. They've been friends since we started, been good. That's one of the things about the bourbon industry that I really like. We're friendly competitors, and everybody helps each other out. And we all kind of tend to support each other a lot, especially in the craft level. So it's just as likely that if you go to my place, I'm going to send you to Casey Jones or MB Rowland that are close by, and people do the same. And so we started out working with them at the very beginning, getting our recipe figured out. We buy our yeast and our enzymes from them, and they're a rapidly expanding company, building beautiful new warehouses, like one after the other. So it was an opportunity for us to be stored in a state-of-the-art facility that we could access and get to. That will be one of the challenges to growth, though. We can't grow at the level we'd like to grow and still truck barrels to storage all the time. So a barrel warehouse, probably before we ever looked at doing a physical plant, we'd have to look at doing a barrel warehouse. And right down to the packaging, I mean, I wanted it to be, from the get-go, I was trying to make a high-end product.
Right.
And because if you're a boutique, you can't compete on quantity, right?
That's right.
So you got to compete on quality. Well, I appreciate you featuring us on this, and I hope you get to do a lot of this all around to lots of different distilleries.
So Marc at the distillery told us to come out and talk to you because there is a story behind the name, the Dueling Grounds.
Yeah, when he cranked up the distillery, he very wisely named after it a local landmark and incorporated some local history into it, which us folks that are interested in that sort of thing have encouraged very vigorously. Yeah. The Kentucky-Tennessee state line takes a little jog south into Tennessee, and it was just a mistake in the surveying of it. And it created a legal no man's land. For decades, they weren't sure whose laws applied, and it was also conveniently close to Nashville. So gentlemen with very serious disputes could just come up here, take advantage of the fuzzy legal situation in this part of the two states, and fight their duel. And if you were from Tennessee, you just step back across the state line, which was right over there from paces feet, literally away from where they think that's where it was, where you fought the duel. And the Kentucky sheriff wouldn't follow you. So it was ideal for that. It was called the Lincoln Pinch. And to be perfectly honest, we have no idea where that word came from. We have no idea what it means.
Really?
Yeah, no clue, no clue. But, it's an interesting sounding word.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it's distinctive. Nobody else is going to be using it for anything.
Yeah, I heard a story from somebody that that little piece that they cut out, somebody bribed the surveyor with bourbon.
That is a story. Now, I think the reason that the little jog exists is just simply the surveyors took off in the wrong direction one morning. And when they realized their mistake, later in the day, they surveyed back up to a point where they should have been. And I don't think that really had anything to do with the bourbon or whiskey. But if you look close at maps, that little jog comes down and then there's a little rectangular cutout in it. And that was when they resurveyed that line many years after the original survey. They did that. Now that was because apparently the guy who owned that farm wanted to be in Tennessee, not Kentucky.
Wow.
And that's where I think the barrel of whiskey story comes in, that he bribed them with a barrel of whiskey just to make that little notch in the border there, which was never changed, never resolved. It's still legally binding today. Sam Houston, of all the people, we think there may have been up to 40 duels fought at the Lincoln Bench Dueling Ground. And he was by far the most famous fella to fight one. It's a long, complicated story that I don't fully understand, but it involves period Tennessee politics, who knows. And they ended up on the dueling ground at Lincoln Bench. In fact, Houston stayed in the Sanford Duncan Inn here for a few days before the fight. Supposedly he cast his bullets in the bar here and practiced with his pistols out behind the barn back this way. And then they went up to the dueling ground. Sanford Duncan supervised the proceedings. The guy that ran the inn here supervised the duel. And Houston wounded his opponent. The guy he was shooting at missed Houston entirely, didn't hurt him a bit. But Houston's bullet hit his opponent in the groin, but he lived. He was they said it took him about 2 years to fully recover from it, but he did. The Sanford Duncan Inn is owned by Simpson County government, and it's operated by Franklin Simpson Tourism. We're open now Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, 10 to 4 Friday, Saturday, Monday, 1 to 4 on Sunday. And then at 4, we shut down and we go up to the distillery for cocktails. And we're open May Day through Halloween.
Oh, wow, okay.
Okay. Oh no, 35, 40 miles maybe. I-65 is a mile that way, exit number 2. It couldn't be easier, quicker to get to from Nashville. Great little day trip. And then Franklin's got a lot of fun stuff to do too. The place where Johnny Cash and June Carter got married is there on the square. The first human being we know of to die in an encounter with a UFO happened about 3 miles that way.
Now that is interesting stuff.
That's a whole other video.
I borrow those guns?
Yeah, give me one, and we each take one, and when one of us screws up, the other one just blows him away. That'd work.